joining us on the phone is Tim Hasselbeck. Tim, how you doing?
Good, Michael. Don, how are you?
Good.
We're doing great. How good was Michael Strahan?
He's pretty awesome. Kind of asked about him earlier today on NFL Live, and my NFL career kind of started off with the Eagles, and then I ended up with the Redskins, and so was on the opposing team a handful of times. And the thing that people need to remember about Strahan is that early on in his career, he played at like 295. I think people see him now, and he's kind of tall and thin, and even at the end of his career, when I was a teammate of his, after he had a foot injury, and then he tore his pec the prior season, and he got down to about 265, which I think allowed him to continue to play with enough speed to be really effective. He was one of these guys that not only did he play for a long time at a productive level, but he changed the type of player he was as the game began to evolve. But probably more important than any of that stuff, he's probably the one player that I was ever a teammate with that their leadership transcended what side of the ball they were on. He wasn't just a leader of the defense. He really was the leader of the entire team when I was in New York and after I left for sure. And I think that speaks volumes about kind of how the team appreciated him, as well as just how much everybody respected him because of how good he was.
How rare is it for a pass-rushing defensive end to be as good as he was against the run?
I mean, it's rare because most guys look at it from the standpoint of, hey, I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get my money by sacking the quarterback. I mean, think about, and this is not to take a shot at him, but think about the difference between Michael Strahan and to give kind of an apples to apples so I guess listeners understand, O.C.U. Manura. I mean, just think about the difference of the type of player you're dealing with. And O.C. had some awesome moments with the Giants, but he was a totally different player who had no qualms about just sprinting up the field. Michael, again, starts off, his career, playing against these big maulers in the run game and holding his own in large part because of the size that he was. I mean, he played so heavy, but still with so much power and ability, and then ability to rush the passer. You're a lot of times you're dealing with a tight end because teams, because of where the hash marks are in pro football, are in predominantly right-handed formations with an inline tight end right there. So you look at that stuff and some of the guys that he battled with, especially in the division, it's really impressive. And I've heard some people take some shots at him, kind of because of where he played. And I think it's a bunch of nonsense because of how well-rounded a player he was.
I want to shift to another topic that has really gnawed at me lately, and I want to get your take on it. We've got a lot of coverage here in New York about how Tom Coughlin is upset at Odell Beckham Jr. for being hurt. Now, that would be like, I'm upset because somebody's going to have heart surgery. I mean, you think this kid wants to be out? How could you be upset at a guy who has an injury? So if you're upset at a guy, Tim, what I'm thinking is you think he's faking it.
It's true. Listen, I think that people wired like you, Michael, yes, that's how you would react to it. I mean, I think there are plenty of NFL coaches that are wired that way, that they say, more important, I guess, than their frustration is the fact that, this guy wants to be out here. The guy was, an early first-round draft pick. It's a great opportunity for him. He wants to be out here learning this stuff so that he can have a great season. I think that Coach Coughlin is different in the sense that, sometimes he can't help himself. I mean, he's so competitive, and the frustration sometimes is so immense that.
Tim, I read a quote from him that Coach Coughlin does not believe in soft tissue injuries. Are you kidding me? I mean, there are such a thing as a hamstring injury.
Yeah, he's old school like that. I mean, look, I think it's part of the mindset for him, and I think he understands. Listen, he's been around long enough he's well aware, and he's coached the wide receiver position. So, I mean, he really knows. But listen, you have to be careful with that type of thing, or else it'll gnaw at you all season long. Now, what he won't do is ever let Odell Beckham, who's not got a pass in the NFL, think that it's okay to be missing time. So I know those things don't totally mesh with one another, but that's where it comes from. That's where his frustration and willingness to let Odell Beckham know that he's not happy that he's not practicing, that's really where it comes from. He's well aware that he's hurt and running full speed might be the worst possible thing that he could do at this point, but that doesn't mean he wants Beckham to ever think that it's okay to be missing practice.
I had a chance to talk to Tom Coughlin about the situation at camp yesterday, and he just tried to make it clear that he's frustrated at the situation, not the player. But my concern to Tom and my concern to you is, all right, the doctors are going to clear him, so it's really out of Tom Coughlin's hands and sometimes the player's hand whether they play. But my concern is the mentality of he's out on the field, it's bothering him, and now he's scared to tell anybody that it's bothering him because of the way the coach reacted originally.
Listen, I mean, it's fair concern. There's no question. And you're right on the money with it. I mean, look, listen, this Odell Beckham is not getting cut. So now, how about if you're a kid who, you're fighting for that, the last wide receiver spot, or that last tight end spot, or that last running back spot, last corner spot. I mean, that's really the guy that is saying, there's no shot I'm telling anybody this is bothering me. I mean, so I agree with you. I would just say that that's kind of the nature of the beast of the NFL. You've heard plenty of people saying, availability is better than ability. And, it's why they were guys, that didn't make it because they would sit out parts of training camp because they felt like their hammy was tight and it was about ready to go. And there are other guys that said, you know what, I'm just going to manage this. I'm not going 100%. I'm going to deal with a couple bad practices because I can't run full speed, and I'm going to get through this without missing time. I mean, it's just the reality of playing in the NFL. So we're talking about hamstring now. Well, now how about if it's a concussion? It's the same issue for all these players that are on the roster bubble.
Tim Hasselbeck is our guest here on the Michael K. Show. Now, before I let you go, I'm going to throw you a curveball. Everybody is jumping all over Johnny Manziel. He goes out to Vegas and party. Let me ask you this. You were a quarterback in the NFL. Can you party? Can you have 16 women a weekend that you hang out with and still be a big-time quarterback? Joe Namath, I guess, would say yes. Do you believe it can be done?
Well, let me say this. I think that there are guys that go at it harder than Manziel goes at it in his social life that have had and are having very successful careers. I saw something that he was at a bar, not far from Brown camp. Well, the reality is that I don't think that there was a single team that I was on, and on 8 different teams, that guys weren't, at a tavern or a local bar at some point during training camp. It happens. Now, I'm not saying that it's what should happen or it's what he should do, but to criticize him for it when no one else is getting criticized for it, I think is a little bit of a stretch.
But if there was a player that liked to party and somebody in the media asked him about it, they would probably say, oh, it's not that bad, or something to kind of downplay it. I don't think a guy that's never played a game in the NFL before would go, oh, I'm not going to change the way I am. I mean, I think that irked people more than the partying to begin with.
Yeah, and let's be fair. It's not like we're just acting like a 21-year-old that decided to have a couple Coors Lights at the end of, after a long practice when they maybe just had a walkthrough in the morning. There's shots of him rolling up a dollar bill, as he's in an elevator, and all of the things that I guess leads people, the imagination starts running wild at that point of, all right, I know guys that drink alcohol. I don't know that they're rolling dollar bills for any purpose. But
Tim, they didn't draft Mother Teresa. They knew who they were drafting. He didn't change the rules in the middle of the game.
Oh, listen, I don't think. Look, the Browns, if they didn't know who they're drafting, then they were hiding under a rock last fall, and really everything leading up to this draft process. I mean, you knew who Johnny Manziel was. Here's what he's done. Ultimately, end of the day, with all this stuff, ultimately what's happening is, because he is a rookie and a young player, and really just because he's a quarterback in the NFL, there's going to be good games and there's going to be bad games. Now what he has done is he has put himself in a position where every time he has a bad game, people will then look and say, you know what, wasn't studying enough. You know, Peyton Manning wouldn't do that. When I don't know if that's accurate, but that's the perception, because now he's just seen as a partier. So really all it's done is made people go immediately back to the off-the-field actions when he's not playing well, when that might not be why he's making mistakes. That's what people will immediately go to.
Tim, we thank you as always. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you guys.